Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? First off, welcome to everybody, and I'm recording this, so we'll also be able to get this to people so they'll have it as well. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Courtney Helmanowski. I knew Courtney back when she was little Courtney Veerman, when she was 10 years old. She swam at a swim camp that I was working at, and she was always just this gregarious little kid who loved swimming distance. And she ended up swimming in high school for Jack Pettinger and Drew Walden at the Aquatic Club, and then moved on to swim at the University of Minnesota. She was a gopher for 4 years and a team captain. She is an extraordinarily accomplished young woman. She does all kinds of crazy stuff, and she is shaping up as well to be the world's best mom, an adorable little one, and a cool dog, and a cat, and just all kinds of stuff going on. So she had reached out to me. She said she'd like to help out any way she could. So we decided to bring her in, and we'll see how this goes. So I'm just going to turn it over to Courtney, let her do her thing. And like I said, we will be recording, so we'll have this resource for quite a while. So with that, I'll put aside Dr. Courtney Helmanowski. Thanks, Courtney.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for letting me join in on your Zoom meetings today. One thing I wanted to offer to the swim community is working on really bulletproofing the shoulders. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I was a distance freestyler and ended up with shoulder surgery my sophomore year in college after about 4 years of shoulder problems before that. And I was your typical teenager in high school that thought they knew more than their PT and didn't do any of my rehab. And so it's amazing that I ended up in the PT world now. But one thing that I wanted to talk about are some really easy ways to integrate shoulder strengthening from a swimming perspective, because sometimes we do some of these exercises and it just doesn't make sense for your athletes, or they're like, this is dumb, like I'm just moving this band over and over, and they don't understand the rationale behind it. And I wanted to give you a little bit of the science on why we do some really specific exercises and in different planes of motion, and then how you can integrate this with your teams and with some of your swimmers. And so my passion is working with swimmers in the clinic. I'm a shoulder specialist. I work at Active PT in Rochester, Minnesota. And I do a lot of work with a lot of different swimmers in the community. So one thing that I want to talk about is just a little bit of the science. I'll keep that to a minimum because I know that's not the most interesting part of this, but we train freestyle 81% of the time in practices. So if for your elite swimmers, let's say they're doing 7,000 yards a day, roughly, give or take, okay? If you're doing 7,000 yards a day, 6 days a week, they're doing 13,440 shoulder revolutions a week. That's crazy. It's not like that's wrong, because that's how we operate, right? But we have in baseball and in other youth sports, we have pitch counts for a reason, because the shoulder is such an important joint. In swimming, it's also the most important joint that we have to utilize. And with all these different research studies, we know that 40 to 80% of injuries that occur with swimming are related to the shoulder. And a lot of times it's due to an imbalance of forces throughout the shoulder. So we build up these massive pec and lat muscles because that's what the demand of the sport is. But then we don't tend to build up the rotator cuff muscles and what we call the periscapular muscles, or the muscles between the shoulder blades. And that leads to this imbalance of these really strong muscles that pull us into this kind of barrel hugged position, which works for a period of time until it doesn't. And once that balance becomes too tipped to the other big muscle groups, we end up with more of an impingement of the shoulder throughout the different strokes, especially freestyle and butterfly. And so ways that we can start to tip that scale to help even that system out a little bit and work on preventing injuries, and also working on injuries that are already in progress, is to really hone in on some very specific.
I'm trying to think. I'm sorry. Put your headset on.
is working on some rotator cuff strengthening and then working on some thoracic mobility. And my guess is you guys have seen bits and pieces of some of the exercises that I've put together, and I've sent email a PDF with all of the exercises that I've put together, so he can share that with you guys. But if we work on integrating these in different ways, kind of, I've put these together very specifically for reasons, we can really start to hone in on hopefully preventing injuries from occurring. And this is the perfect opportunity when your teams are out of the pool right now. This is ways that your athletes can be working on this so that when you get back into the pool, hopefully it's sooner rather than later, they're ready to go and they're not having to pull out for injury reasons. So this is a perfect opportunity to get your swimmers to start to work on this, because the more we build strength in the shoulders, the less likely they are to get injury. Doesn't mean that they're not going to get injury, but we're going to work on tipping that scale to lessen that, okay? Do you guys have questions for me on any of that before I dive into some of the exercises?
And guys, if you just want to unmute yourselves, ask a question and then remute, we can do it that way. Probably the easiest way to do it. Okay.
Okay, so real quick, there was a study done by the University of Iowa about 5 years ago, and they were looking at different positions of freestyle where we get shoulder impingement or pinching of those rotator cuff muscles. And they actually found that about 30% of the swim stroke itself is a impinged position of the shoulder. So inherently swimming is tough on the body, okay, tough on the shoulders. But one thing that they found, and this is one thing that I do when I'm doing swim analysis with my patients, is I'm looking for a couple key things. So I like to give coaches these different pearls to look at. And these are things that we're looking at as far as a shoulder impingement piece, not so much this isn't going to make or break their performance, but it's going to help with injury. So one of the first things that we see is bilateral breathing. Most of you guys know that that's super important to be distributing the force that we place on the shoulders. If I'm always breathing to one side, and this is what I did as a swimmer because that research wasn't out there 10 years ago, I only breathed to the right side and I ended up with right-sided shoulder surgery. And the reason for that is when I'm going through my stroke, when I go to take my breath, when I come off of my breath, this arm has to do a little bit more of that reach to overcome the body's roll, okay? That doesn't seem like a big deal. But when you're doing that 13,000 times in a week, that little bit of difference that one arm has to overcome compared to the other side makes a huge difference long-term, okay? So that's one of the reasons that we encourage that bilateral breathing, is to distribute the amount of work that each shoulder has to do. The other thing that I like to look at with my swimmers is the hand entry position. So if your hand, when you're entering, is crossing midline, there's that area of time here from when it crosses midline to getting back towards its side. One, that it's not creating any forward propulsion, but two, we're actually impinging that bicep tendon. And so we pinch the bicep tendon when we've crossed midline, and then to get back over to where you would start your pull, you're having to use more of the rotator cuff muscles. And again, that little bit of extra work over a period of time increases the demand on those rotator cuff muscles, and they're not necessarily set up anatomically to handle that, okay? So you're wasting energy getting back to the start position of your catch, but then you're also more in that impinged position. So what I'm looking for with my swimmers is making sure that they're entering just a little bit wider, okay? The last thing that is also super critical is the hand position when you enter. And so I want you guys all you can try this with me here. We want to make sure that we're entering in with more of the knife edge of our hand. And the reason for that is we have a bony block in our shoulder called the greater tuberosity. If I enter in with more of my thumb and index finger, I'm in what's called internal rotation of the shoulder. In that position, I can only go so far with my shoulder because I reach a bony block that prevents me from going any further. Okay, so try it. If you reach with your thumb and index finger, you kind of get stuck, okay? Oh, I love it, Pickles. And then if you go in with your more of the knife edge of your hand, so third, fourth, and fifth digit, it's not like you're, cutting way here, but you're just rotating a little bit into what we call external rotation. You're able to glide more onto your side without getting stuck in what we call the glenohumeral joint. And so it just opens up the shoulder space kinematically to allow you to roll into more of that reached position that we're looking for. It allows you to cut through the water a little bit better. So those are the 3 clinical pearls that I'm looking at when I have my swimmers get in the pool for me. Now, those are things that are, you guys all have coaches' eyes and can be looking at. But from a rehab perspective, those 3 things can make or break shoulder pain. And so if you have a swimmer that has shoulder pain, try those couple things. And if that gets rid of it right then and there, beautiful. You've probably gotten rid of that classic pinched position in the shoulder, and you can just keep going on. So those are some really easy things to start with. If you guys have questions on that, again, type them out here, unmute yourself, but I'm just gonna keep going from here to keep this ball rolling for you guys, okay? So what I wanna look at is some exercises to then really focus on that rotator cuff strengthening. And I've put together these exercises for things that your athletes will have at home right now, because again, it's not like we have access to a ton of bands or weights or things like that. So the first thing that I want to show you is I like to do this on a yoga ball, or have my swimmers do this on a yoga ball to make them work a little bit more on that core stability. But if they don't have that, they can do this on a ottoman, on a bench, really anything that they can hang off of. And we're going to start with doing what we call the physical therapy YTW. Okay, you guys may have seen these before. But if we slow it way down and do this with good form, you're really going to hone in on the correct muscles to be strengthening. And again, I did this when I was an athlete. I could do this all day, okay? But until somebody showed me how to do it correctly, I was just whipping through the exercises. So what I'm looking for here is that I'm hanging off and that I'm creating or keeping my chest off the ball. Just like in swimming, I have to keep my trunk upright, or in this next long line. From there, I'm going into a Y position, a T position, and a W without letting myself round or arch over the ball. We tend to see so often is that poor swimming posture, and I'm still working on that, and it's been 10 years, and I have this turtleback, and so I really have to work on opening up, and I'm going to give you some ways to work on that, but encourage your swimmers that they have to stay upright with this Y, T, W, okay? Great place to start with some of your junior age swimmers, and then your more experienced senior age swimmers that are already doing some weights can add 2.5 pound plates, 5 pound plates. They can hold on to some water bottles, cans of soup. You don't need a ton of weight to strengthen these, but you need to do it properly. So great way to progress that. So that's gonna be exercise number 1 for that YTW. It's mimicking swimming in that you're more in a prone position. So you have to integrate your core and then also integrate trunk. Let's see.
Ask a quick question before you move on. Quick question on the YTW, are you always coming back to neutral before going into the next? So you don't go from Y to T to W, you go from Y, neutral, T,
Yep.
neutral,
Yep.
W.
From Y to T to W, and I say that because it forces me to go through more of a natural swim stroke, okay? So I'm coming in that Y, and then I'm bringing my arms down, T, bringing the arms down, W.
Okay.
Really working on controlling that trunk in space, okay?
Okay.
There's
Should there be a pause?
Yeah.
Like how long, like 3 second, 5 second, like where's the tension?
to take a breath so that they're not counting. Just breathe in, breathe out,
Okay.
and then go. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
What does she mean between junior versus senior swimmers by age? I would say junior swimmers are more of your middle schoolers. Senior swimmers are those that are post-puberty, high school age. It's not that weight training is wrong for those that are pre-puberty, but we just want to be careful on how we're doing that. And so a lot of times body weight and just understanding how to move your body is more important than loading them at that time. So hopefully that answers your question. Perfect, Tom. Okay, so yeah, again, to make this more challenging, add some light weight. I am still doing these for my shoulders, and I've been doing these for 10 years, and I've only made it up to 7.5 pounds. That's how hard this exercise is if you do it right, okay? In the PDF that I've sent the sets and reps listed for each of these exercises. So you'll have this all to go, and I've set it up into 2 circuits. Circuit 1 being 3 exercises and 2 mobility. Circuit 2 being, I think, 4 exercises and 2 mobility, and you would do that twice throughout the week. So 4 times would be ideal, okay? I've sent the PDF to John, but I will throw it on here as well. So if you guys give me just a second, I'll put that on here too, okay? Let me see if I know how to put that in here.
You may not be able to, although I was about to be astonished at your ability to simultaneously work out, address the group, put a share screen when I apparently can't even send out a password correctly. So well done for you.
Yeah, you know what? I'll have to send you guys this or have John send it afterwards. That's one thing.
Email it to me and I'll send it out with the recording, Courtney, to everybody. So we'll get that taken care of.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so then the next exercise that I have is in what we call a closed chain position. So we have 2 different ways to strengthen the shoulders. And one of the things that we see with swimmers is shoulders have a ton of shoulder mobility. That's what makes you a good swimmer is, you know, your swimmers can get way back here, right? But what tends to happen is they haven't developed the adequate stability or what we call proprioception on how to manage their shoulders in space. They can get way up here, but they have no idea how to control that motion up there. And the way that we strengthen that is actually through what we call closed chain strengthening or weight bearing through the arms, okay? And so I'm going to give you an exercise that we call a shoulder tap, and I'm going to give you ways to regress it and progress it depending upon where your swimmers are at. So you may have some high-level swimmers that say, oh my God, this is so easy. Okay, I've got ways to make that harder for you, okay? So again, we're working on this next exercise is a closed chain exercise, meaning I'm weight bearing through the shoulder. And what I'm doing is I'm setting my shoulders, so locking them down and back. What I don't want to see is that we get these shoulders up towards our ears, because that's going to just put us in really bad positioning for the shoulders. So I'm setting my shoulders, and then I'm going to go into it. Would be the easiest version, is a modified plank. From here, I'm working on tapping my opposite shoulder as slow as I can so that my hips and my knees aren't going in every which direction, okay? Then, if that's pretty easy, you would go into a high plank position, okay? Same thing, I'm setting my shoulders down and back, and I'm going this slow to make sure that I'm stabilizing, okay? Last variation is gonna be in what we call a leopard position. So I'm on hands and knees, and then I'm lifting my knees just 2 inches off the ground, setting my shoulders, and tapping the opposite side. I picked this exercise because it integrates core activation and controlling the midline and hips along with shoulder strengthening. Because again, in swimming, we have to be able to control this whole line as opposed to just one thing at a time. So it's integrating different planes of motion and being able to control that. Again, sets and reps are listed here. I think I put 4 sets of 30 seconds, and it should be that slow. So your swimmers can do this and they can whip out a ton of reps. Again, that's what I used to do, and it's super easy and you're not getting the right stimulus of the movement. So educating them that it's really, really slow, okay? And one thing that I forgot to mention is, if you guys want to set up a Zoom session for your team, and I've done this for a bunch of other teams now, let's set this up. Just shoot me an email and I can do one for your individual team as well. But next exercise is going to be what we call a prone row external rotation press. This one's spicy, okay? So again, I'm coming on my stability ball here to again mimic swimming in that prone position. I'm gonna use 2.5 pound plates, but again, the weight of your body, the weight of your arms is enough for some of your beginner swimmers. And for some of your more experienced swimmers, we can go into a heavier 5 pound plate, 7 pound weight, something like that. So what I'm doing is, again, setting my shoulders. I'm coming into that high elbow position, just like you want in that high elbow catch. Okay, so I'm going high elbow. I'm coming up, and then I'm pressing forward, coming back into that high elbow position, and then coming straight down. High elbow, rotate, press, back, and down, okay? This one, again, is going to mimic a lot of those positions that you want your swimmers to hit, and it reinforces that high elbow position on your catch phase, which is something that I have a really hard time directing when patients are in the pool. And so this is a great way to work on that outside the pool and say, hey, here's where you need to be, here's where you should feel that, okay? So that's that high row with the external rotation press. The last one I want to show you on that circuit day 1, and your athletes don't necessarily have to have a band with this, okay? I use a band for my swimmers in clinic just because I have access to it, but you don't have to. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my band, okay, and I'm threading it through my hands like you did with cat's cradle 20 plus years ago, okay? Then what I'm doing is I'm coming against the wall, okay, and I'm putting my hands against the wall here, and my elbows are staying in, and I'm putting just a little bit of tension out on the band. But again, if you don't have a band, you can do this without it. And then what I'm working on is just keeping my elbows pinned in while I'm going up and down. And this is working on scapular control, which is something a lot of your swimmers, you'll see that they have those winged shoulder blades. This is an exercise to work on keeping those shoulder blades along the thorax, okay? So again, elbows in, pinning it in, and I'm sliding up and I'm sliding down. So that's circuit day 1 with the exercises. And then I want to give you a couple pieces of thoracic mobility for day 1, and then we'll move on to day 2, which is a little bit shorter. So a lot of times with swimmers, we have that hunchback position, and they sit around and they look like this, and you have this turtle back, and they have that hinge point. Everybody can see that with their swimmers on deck. And so because of the demand of the sport, we end up with this kind of hinge point, because that's where all of our motion comes from when we're pulling through the water. And so we actually get a really stiff thoracic spine. And in order to move and roll better, we need more mobility in the thoracic spine to create that roll. And that's something we don't spend a lot of time on because it's kind of an overthought on what to do. But this can really take your swimmers to the next level as far as mobility. Or if you have a swimmer that they're really flat on the surface of the water and you're like, God, you know, they're just not getting it. It may be that they actually don't have the available mobility to do that. So this would be a way to work on that. So one of my favorite ways to do that, okay, so I'm getting on the floor into a modified child's pose. I'm taking one hand and putting that down out in front of me, okay? Taking my other hand and putting it behind my low back. From there, all I'm doing is trying to open up my collarbones to the ceiling, okay, without cranking my shoulder, because that's cheating. It's not actually thoracic movement. So I'm trying to rotate from my sternum and collarbones and just work on moving through that range of motion, right? That's an easy one for your swimmers to do while they're watching TV and a commercial break comes on. It's more of a stretch, not so much a strengthening exercise. The other piece of mobility that I like, and this one's probably pretty familiar to you guys, is thoracic extension over a foam roller, a rolled up yoga mat, or a towel. And you're just working on, again, counterbalancing that slumped thoracic position, okay? So I'm putting that foam roller towel roll under my thoracic spine, hands behind my head, tucking in my elbows, and just reaching up and over and hanging out here, okay? Again, spending 2 to 3 minutes in these mobility pieces. So that would be circuit day 1. The exercises should take your swimmers about 5 minutes, and the mobility should take about 5 minutes here, okay? Questions on day 1 before I move into day 2? Okay, perfect. I will keep going here. Day 2 is a lot of the same things. I'm working on that rotator cuff strength along with mobility, but we're doing it in different ways to constantly change so that your body doesn't get complacent or, you know, just, oh yeah, I've done this all day, okay? So the first set of exercises that we're gonna do are, again, for the rotator cuff. I'm gonna lay on my side, okay? And I'm taking a 2.5 pound plate, okay? And I'm going into 3 motions. These are meant to fatigue out your rotator cuff in a hurry. And so you're gonna do the first 3 exercises back to back to back to tire out the rotator cuff muscles. And this will make sense when you see the PDF. I have them listed right after one another. So the first movement, I'm going into shoulder flexion, okay, up in front of me. As if I had a coffee table in front of me, I'm following the lines of the coffee table. I'm not dipping down, okay? So I'm coming up here into shoulder flexion and I'm going until I get tired. Tired is when, holy crap, my shoulder feels like it's on fire. Good, that's where you're supposed to be, okay? From there, I'm immediately going into horizontal abduction, okay? So as if I'm closing a book and opening a book, my knuckles are going straight to the ceiling. Again, I'm going to fatigue, and then I'm immediately gonna go into external rotation. So elbow pinned in by my side and rotating up, okay? Going into flexion, horizontal abduction or opening the book, and external rotation, boom, boom, boom. Then I would take a break, about 40 seconds to a minute. And then I would do that again, and then I would take a break, and then I would do that again. So 3 times to fatigue on each of those motions. Again, 1 pound, starting with a can of soup, 2.5 pound plates or a water bottle or a half gallon of milk that's filled halfway. You can work your way up to a full half gallon of milk, which is 4 pounds. Anything that's gonna challenge them. You don't want your swimmers to be doing like 40 reps, then the weight is too light. But if they've chosen a weight that they can only do, 4 or 5 reps, that's too heavy. So you're trying to find that middle ground of 12 to 20 reps with the weight that they choose, okay? The next movement, I think, is one of my favorites for swimmers. They find this one fun. I don't find shoulder rehab particularly like the most fun I've ever had. And I know from the swimmer's perspective, it's not that much fun, but this one I really enjoy. And so this one is mimicking that dynamic control that we have to be able to manage in the water. So we're pulling through our stroke. And we have the constant waves and water that's bouncing against our hand that our tiny muscles have to be able to challenge as we're pulling through, okay? And we have to be able to strengthen that, and we call that perturbation training. And so the way that we can mimic this without having anybody else around is, again, I'm coming on my yoga ball here. And I'm coming into this position here. And I have a 2.5-pound plate. They can use a softball, a baseball, a lacrosse ball, a water bottle, anything that has just a little bit of weight to it and that they can hold on to or palm. And then from here, I'm just dropping that weight and re-catching it ever so slightly in this position here. Now to make it more swim specific, you can have them go through the entire motion of a stroke, okay? And so you can have them start up here and then they're working on keeping that high elbow until they get down to the bottom and then doing that again, okay? If they're a butterfly specialist, have them do both at the same time to work on that dynamic stability as they're going through. Same thing with the breaststroker, have them do that. Backstroke's a little bit more challenging, so I would just tell them to do more of a freestyle motion here, okay? Again, this one's done for time, not for a rep scheme. So like 20 to 30 seconds, 4 times through, okay? So those are the exercises on day 2, and then I wanna show you a couple of the mobility pieces that they can work on day 2 as well. Again, working in some of the same exercise type movements, I'm just working in different ways, okay? So this one takes a little bit of setup here. What I'm showing you first is that my leg towards the wall, or excuse me, yes, my leg towards the wall is bent up against the wall, okay? So I'm in a half kneeling position. And then from here, I'm gonna start with both arms out in front, okay, nice tall through my spine. And then I'm opening up my arm that's closest and I'm coming through and showing my chest to the wall. And then coming back. Opening up and showing my chest to the wall, coming back. And again, I'm just working on that thoracic rotation. You would do that on both sides. And then the last one, which is typically the most challenging for swimmers because they can cheat the system a little bit, is what we call a wall slide. And it's just working on opening up through the front of the chest here to combat this position that we tend to be in. So I'm sitting up against the wall, my butt is flat back against the wall, my low back is touching the wall, my shoulders are touching the wall, and my neck is touching the wall. From there, I'm gonna come into elbows and wrists against the wall. And I'm working into a streamline position, okay? And that's about all the further that I can get. And I feel a really good stretch through the front of my chest. It's super easy to cheat this one, and a lot of your swimmers will do that. So if they take their shoulder blades off the wall, they can get into that streamline position, okay? So you've gotta make sure you're staying against the wall and you're just working through here. And it's not like you win if you get into a streamline, okay? That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is just to improve from where you started and then get better as you work on it. And hey, if you get into a streamline position, beautiful. You've got great thoracic mobility. But it doesn't mean, you know, you're a better swimmer because of it. It's just another thing to be working on. So that's the circuit of day 2. Questions for me on any of those or why I've chosen those? Okay, so JB has listed my email address in there. Again, I'd love to, if you guys want to set this up with your teams individually, I'm here to do that. I just want to reach out and let you know that I'm here to help you guys out. It's a free Zoom session. It would be the exact same thing that we went through here, but I'd love to reach out to you and just let you know that you have options as far as a contact or a resource on who to reach out to that understands the sport if you guys have swimmers that are going through shoulder injuries, because I've been there, I've done it, I understand what the rehab piece is like from an athlete side, and I understand the demand of the sport. but I also understand the rehab side of it and kind of why we need to pick and choose certain exercises for the sport itself. So don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have questions on a specific swimmer and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. One of the cool things about the state of Minnesota is that I can help you out no matter where you're at within the state. And so I'd love to be a resource to offer that to you guys. But in this time of, everybody's just kind of figuring stuff out, let's set up a Zoom session to help your team out. But hopefully this brought some ideas that you guys can add into your either your shoulder preventative routine or your dryland routine that you have for your swimmers to really keep their shoulders healthy and strong so that when they get back in the pool, they're ready to go and not having to deal with lingering shoulder problems.
Courtney, I've got a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
If you've got the time, that would be great. So given your level of success and I think any of us would be more than happy to have an athlete who had accomplished all the things that you'd accomplished. What do you feel was the most beneficial things that coaches communicated to you when you were dealing with injury? How did they support you? And do you have any insight into how coaches can be more effective with communicating and then supporting an athlete through rehabilitation?
Yeah, I think, so one of the best things that happened to me was probably up at the U working with Kelly Kramer and Terry Niesner. I was able to keep training, so to speak, in that I still got to be integrated with the team, but I would do kick sets. And I had to do, because this was after shoulder surgery, I had to do kick sets for like 7 months. But I still got to be with the team. And I think that's so important on the sports psychology side of it, is still being integrated with the team, not feeling like, they're doing something completely different. If they're able to at least warm up with the team, warming up with the team. And then I remember sitting down with our athletic trainers and they said to me, you know what, Courtney, even though you're out of the pool right now, we are working to get you back stronger so that when you can join the team again, you are healthy and you are strong. And we're taking this time to really hone in on specific sets of skills to make sure that you are at your peak performance. And so kind of changing the way that they talk to me about the mindset and the time out of the pool, using it as a frame of reference of, hey, this is an opportunity for you to get better, not just, we're dealing with injury again. Looking at some of the other things that they can work on. Hey, you have the opportunity to become a really good underwater kicker, or this is your time to really hone in on some of those stroke mechanics and make sure that your stroke is perfect. And so just spinning it to change that light on how we look at injury, I think is super important. And that's something that I talk to a lot of my patients about, because they come in and their identity has been taken away, right? Their identity is swimming, and that's their social status. And that's the way that they're able to talk with their friends. And when they can't be in with that, it's devastating to them. And a lot of things can snowball from there. And so I sit down with them and say, hey, listen, injury sucks. And I get that. And I've been through it, but you have this opportunity to get really good at this skill. And that's going to carry over and make you a better athlete in the long run, because you have to do however many flip turns, you have to do however many kicks off the wall. Here, you can get really good at this, and I'm going to help you rehab the other piece. Let's get you back. And so that's something that I think if coaches integrate that piece as well in, hey, you have 10 other things that you can work on to be better, the athlete tends to buy into the rehab and look at it in a different frame of mind. And I think that's been really beneficial.
This is fantastic. Great job.
Thank you.
Very useful.
I did have one other thought too, and I don't mean to bogart all the questions. Denise, did you want to get on it? Did you have one? You're muted, Denise.
You have to unmute.
Yep, I got it. I was typing and then I decided to unmute. I am going to do another one of these and address strengthening the back chain of muscles in the legs. I have a couple kids that are breaststrokers and have a little bit of trouble above their knees. And so I have been, exploring, looking for them to kind of make sure that the back chain is working and all the stress is not on their knees. So I think for me, it would be helpful if you did another one and addressed hips and knees as much as shoulders. If you could.
I can do that for you for sure. Yeah, because what I see with a lot of my breaststrokers, right, is that medial knee pain because their glutes aren't strong enough. So they put a lot of stress on the inside of their knee and that whip motion of the kick.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do a lot of kind of swim specific hamstring, glute, low back strengthening. So yeah, that's something we could definitely set up for you, Denise.
I guess the other thing I wanted to ask is, as someone who works almost exclusively with athletes and somebody who was an athlete, still is an athlete with your CrossFit stuff, what kind of advice would you have for people in trying to deal with the mental side of this disruption? I know that's not your specialty, but I also know you're living it.
Mm-hmm.
Curious to hear your opinion.
Yeah. And this was something that I struggled with. As an athlete in high school, I just kind of buried it, I guess, and just plugged through and didn't really acknowledge it. And I didn't really acknowledge my coaches or my therapists that were trying to help me at the time. Because I was a rebellious teenager and thought I knew everything. Like most of your teenage athletes, right? And I so wish, and I remember Jack sitting me down, and if you guys don't know who Jack Pettinger was, he was like this legend of a coach, but also a hard ass. And he goes, Courtney, like, you've got to be listening to these things. And he said it in a much more gruff tone of voice with a lot of explicatives, but I wish I would have listened at the time. And I think I wasn't receptive to hearing that from an old guy. And it took me, my athletic trainer in college, again, trying to refocus me on, you're going to be a better athlete if you listen to our advice and work on some of these other accessory things. You can get wickedly strong legs. Okay, I'm gonna set you up in the strength room and you're gonna be doing squats and deadlifts and you're gonna have the strongest legs on the team. Okay, you're gonna be doing kick sets and you're gonna be one of the best kickers for the U of M. Okay, let's go. So that when they come back from injury, they've put every other piece into play to set them up for success. And I think framing it into that mindset of, okay, even though we're down with a shoulder injury, you have 8 other things that you can be the best at and use to your advantage. Let's get your core strength really strong, okay? Your glutes are gonna be there. You're gonna work on glutes. You're gonna work on quad posterior chain strengthening. You're gonna work on your underwaters. You're gonna have a really tight streamline and you're gonna make sure that your mechanics are up to par so that when we can get back to the water and actually going through freestyle, should they be, completely pulled, or maybe they're pulled from just pulling or what have you, they're ready to go and they're a stronger athlete because of that. But I think you really have to frame it for them and help them get to that headspace as opposed to, damn, you've got a shoulder injury, that sucks. I think the cool thing with coaches these days is they have a lot more understanding of what we call the biopsychosocial approach, and understanding that it's a holistic process, not just this joint. You have to understand that this is their livelihood and how they, socialize, how they value their worth, and you can help build them up in a different frame of reference to see that, yeah, it sucks that you have an injury, but you're also going to be better because of it. And so I think you guys have a really awesome place to be working with athletes on that side of it. Again, sports psychology isn't necessarily my background. It's just, but we do a lot of it with our athletes, and I've been through a lot of it. So I think giving them the option of, hey, you want to be a good athlete? Okay, let's get your shit rolling. You're going to be the best kicker on the team. Okay, let's go. We're going to dial in on your underwaters or your streamline position. you're going to be doing 10 underwater kicks off of every single wall so that when you get back to competition, you're doing 10 kicks as opposed to 5 like the rest of your competitions. So
I love the resiliency. And again, this is something I think that we can be working on now while this is all disrupted, while people are struggling to say, well, look, maybe you can't work on that physical game the way you want to, but there's other things you can be working on. And you can identify those things about relatability with your teammates, or making sure that your time management is on track, or whatever that thing is that you're trying to put out there. I think we have an opportunity to help teach them those skills right now. And I think it makes them better. I completely agree with you. So awesome.
yeah.
Anybody got anything else? No, we're good.
Cool. Yeah, you guys reach out. JB will send the PDF and the recording, but reach out. I've done like 7 of these Zoom sessions for different teams across the Midwest, and they've loved it. And if you want something like this for your team, reach out, because I want to be your resource. I want to be your contact person to help you guys out, because this is something that I love, but I also get. And I think that's super important when working with different providers, is if they don't understand what swimming is like, they're just going to tell your athlete to sit out for 6 weeks. And yeah, some people may need that, but most of the time you can get around that with some creativity. So here to help you guys out. So just reach out to me. And we can go from there, and we can set up a couple other sessions where we're working on posterior chain strengthening for the swimmer and core strength, whatever. I've got a lot of resources, and this is my passion. So I'm here to help you guys out with that.
Cool.
Thank you.
I'll make sure that I send all this stuff out. We'll get all that, as well as Courtney's contact info. I'll have all that in a real easily digestible format. Look for that later tonight or tomorrow, and we'll get it all out for you. Awesome.
Guys, I've got a patient at 3, so I am going to have to dip off here, but it was so awesome working with you guys, and hopefully we can connect in the future here, okay?
Courtney, you are the bomb.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to stay on, you're more than welcome to. We can chit chat a little bit. I'd be curious to know from some of the different team leaders where you're at, what your clubs are doing. If you want to just shoot the breeze a little bit and kind of can do that. You don't have to if you don't want to. I know I like seeing you guys. So what's going on? Let's hear it.
You want a camera?
Yes.
Camera upstairs. You can use
Anyone?
I'm getting the camera.
Thank you,
right now.
JB. I
have
got a
one,
flag.
All right, Tim, we'll see you, buddy.
I got to get the weekly email out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Before dry land starts.
I hear you. It's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Figure out why my speaker wasn't working.
No worries. That it sounds like there was an issue with Zoom. Like a couple of people hadn't updated, and that's why they couldn't get on. And I don't know
Okay.
if that's because of all the new security features or what, but
Okay.
definitely something is up. So
I updated, John, I updated about 15 minutes before the session started, and it just wouldn't let me log on.
still would not let on. Okay. Interesting. All right, cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to go work on it.
All right. Thanks, Denise. We'll see ya.
Oh, yeah.
JB, yeah, I also had a problem, as you know. I'm getting on because mine was updating.
Okay. So that's good to know. So I think what I just need to do is include and just say, hey, everybody, just make sure you're updated, make sure you're on.
Yeah.
And then I think these systems are so maxed out because everybody is doing their thing and trying to hang on. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think all the systems are just stressed. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey.
Everything's included.
Hey, I wanted to ask Courtney a question. I forgot to ask her.
Shoot her an email. She'll let you know.
I was going to ask her about kicking with a kickboard, like
Oh,
when you have a shoulder
That's a
issue.
great question.
Yeah, I forgot. It was too late. Everybody's signing off. So yeah, maybe
Well, she was bouncing onto a patient call as well. So
yeah.
Amy, you had indicated what a great, she is phenomenal. I mean,
She is awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
And I just remember her when she was little. I mean, honest to God, working with her at swim camp when she was 10. And then, and she was just this kind of short, like kind of little porky little kid. But she always had incredible feel for the water. And she just float and swim really, really well. And as she got better and better, I mean, it was just like, it was crazy. And she was a photographer, and she was this high school state record holder in Wisconsin for a period of time for the 500 free. And she did all these cool things. And it's just, it's incredibly gratifying to see people who you knew when they were maybe just kind of figuring it out to now. And again, she's a doctor. I mean, it's proud, you know? So
It's really cool.
on any event. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to jump on a call with Katie Goff about Speedos at the U and find out some news about that. We will be hopeful, but we will see what happens. So, but if there's anything you guys need, any information, please just shoot me an email. I will get you what I can. At the board meeting tomorrow, I'm going to lead off with a call that I had USA Swimming Sport Development Consultants and the zone representatives, and kind of what we're trying to do and what we're looking at for restarting and rebooting this thing. So if you want to hop on that board call, that should be a good one tomorrow. So awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, JB.
All right. We'll have a good one.
Thank you.